Welcome back to the Sandwich Generation Pod, the show where we are simultaneously packing school lunches and managing our parents' MyChart passwords. I'm Robyn.
And I'm Eliesa. We love our kids, we love our parents, and some days we like all of them.
Today we're talking about something you might all be able to relate to: difficult parents.
When you're coordinating prescriptions while also navigating 40 years of unresolved family dynamics.
Casual.
To help us navigate the conversations with difficult parents a little better, we're joined today by Molly Darsow, mediator and founder of Still Waters Mediation.
Still Waters Mediation focuses on elder care, end-of-life, estate, and probate disputes. Molly brings her background in counseling and group facilitation to a compassionate, practical approach to complex family conflict, helping people navigate strong emotions, clarify values, and make thoughtful decisions during difficult transitions.
Let's welcome Molly.
Hello, Molly.
Okay, so I want to start by just sharing how we met you, because I kind of love the story of how we met you and how we got here today. Robyn and I went to a care conference for the first time at the University of Minnesota, and we didn't really know what to expect. We were kind of like, we're going to show up, we're going to get information for ourselves.
It's Saturday morning.
Yep,
We're
bright
just
and
walking
early.
around collecting. There's like people with brochures everywhere.
Yep. And you were there. You were there with a booth. And I remember coming up to your booth and being like, what is this? And as you started talking about your business, I was like, oh my gosh, this is brilliant. I had no idea that mediators existed outside of basically like divorce or custody or, you know, legal situations like that. Also, I am married to a family law attorney, so I hear the word mediation all the time, but I've never thought about it in terms of mediating conversation with your family, getting through difficult conversations, difficult times in life, things like that. So will you, Molly, introduce yourself and just tell us what your business is exactly about, because it's so cool.
Sure. And first, I just want to say that I really enjoyed meeting the two of you as well. I think that we instantly connected. And once I heard about what you were doing, I just fell in love with the idea right away. And then after I went and listened to all the episodes, I really think what you're doing is important. And I can relate so much to so much of what is expressed in the episodes. I cried my eyes out at the episode with your friend Stephanie March.
Yeah, we all did. We're still
so
crying.
I've really benefited from the episode, so I'm just really happy to be a part of this today. And
thank you for listening. That is so nice.
From the moment that we met you, in the back of my mind, I was like, this is something that I think would greatly benefit so many listeners and families who are navigating being in the sandwich generation. So tell us all about what you do.
Sure. So I think we connected because we have a shared experience. And so my experience as having been a caregiver with my mom and walking alongside her throughout her cancer journey, that is what motivated me to start this business. So I think that's really important to know and to understand, and probably a big reason of why we connected. But yeah, mediation, most people know about mediation through a divorce process if they know about it. But the truth is that mediation is really just an opportunity to sit down with a neutral third party who can help you have a difficult conversation and hopefully come to some kind of mutually agreed upon resolution outside of the court system. So mediation is used to resolve all kinds of disputes. But having been through that experience with my mom through her end-of-life journey, I just realized as I navigated that with my own siblings, how many points along the way there was potential for real conflict and how there was so much potential for our relationships to be permanently damaged. So I made the choice to package all of my experience, background in counseling and supporting people and mediation, and package it all up and start to offer this to families who might be experiencing difficulty during that time. So end of life, caregiving, aging disputes, that you guys know, there are all these decisions that need to be made. And then, of course, estate and probate disputes after someone passes as well.
Sure.
But
wow.
Yeah, it's super important to know that even though my background is in counseling, It's different than counseling, right? Mediation is not counseling. I don't give advice. I don't act as a judge and impose decisions on people. My role really is to create that space and to facilitate the conversation and to help families who just can't seem to manage it on their own, which
I
is
just
super
think that
common.
yeah, absolutely. And I just think that that's so incredible. I can think of so many family situations with aging parents, with end of life, where things get really tricky. And especially depending on how much planning or non-planning there's been. I mean, it's so emotional, and that can really put a strain on so many relationships. I just think that what you do is incredible. When we met you, I was like, this is a resource that's out there that is so cool. Like, I might be calling you someday.
I think that what we've realized is there are certain subjects or times that are wrought with like really difficult conversations. Anytime you talk about finances with family, anytime you're talking about health decisions, it's everywhere. And then you get into the nitty gritty of like who's inheriting what, who gets what, who's taking care of who. I mean, every single day there's a reason to figure out how to have a difficult conversation with somebody. So we have done a siblings episode, which I know many of you have heard with my sister, and I know we'll kind of touch on it today. But we're really going to try to hone in on the difficult parent. Maybe you have two difficult parents. Maybe you have one difficult parent. But I just feel like we talk to a lot of people going through their own journeys. And, you know, a lot of like kitchen conversations come up about like someone's difficult parent. And it's one of those things where like my dad, Dan Frank, as many people know him, the legend. I say his full name because I have to, because that's just who he is. I would say between my two parents, he is the more opinionated one. And I am just going to be open and honest, and we'll see what happens if he listens to this. But, you know, I just want to put a personal lens on this. You know, my mom has Alzheimer's, and she was the peacemaker, and she was the listener and the glue, and she has a sunny, lovely personality. And that was like really such an important part of the dynamic with our family. And we're a very close family. My dad, I would say, is the one who's like highly vocal, meaning like he yells, you know, that's his main communication. He's like a Jewish man. He yells, you know what I mean? It's like, I'm not going to sugarcoat that. He's highly opinionated. He's highly independent. He just has a point of view. And he also, if he wants something, he will stop at nothing to get it. So like he will call me 7 times if he wants to tell me that like the lamp is in the wrong place in the room. He's got to get through to me, and that's going to take 7 phone calls. You know what I mean? I love my dad. I love him dearly. But, you know, it's like you experience your parents in a very interesting way when you realize that A, they're losing their independence, and B, that they need you more than they've ever needed you before. Me and my sister's lives have changed, and now we have to take care of them. And we love that. We're honored by it, but there's just so much to discuss. So I'm excited to get into it. My question to you is, what do you consider to be a difficult parent?
Yeah, well, you are talking about something that I think is really important to talk about. You could probably have a whole episode on family systems, because you brought up the word dynamic, and you're talking about your role within the family and your dad's role within the family and how people have always been and the role that they played. Your mom was the peacemaker. So within our family system, and this is the same is true for an only child. I have an only child daughter. So the same is true for us as a 3-people family. But we all play a role within our family system, and we get used to playing that role. That role is sort of assigned to us at birth. We build our identities around that role. It's the way that we move through the world, and it's the way that we function within our family. When that system is disrupted or there's stress put on the system and people are asked to change their roles, it can be really, really difficult. So this is what you're describing, Robyn, right? Like your mom's no longer able to fulfill her role. Your dad has always been this certain way. Now he's being asked to give up some of his independence, and you're being asked to play more of a parent role. So that's disruptive. And everybody's just like, what is going on? And oftentimes when we're feeling that way, we revert back to some pretty unhealthy coping mechanisms, or maybe we revert right back to our childhood role or whatever it is. But when that family system is under stress like that, things get difficult. And so I think the difficult parent part, obviously there are people who have personalities who are more difficult or less difficult, but we have to remember sort of where that difficulty is coming from. And there's a lot underneath the difficult behavior, right? So
Mhm.
that's kind of the key, I think, is looking at first what is going on within our family that's difficult for everyone and causing some of this disruption. And then what's going on with that individual person that would be causing them to be so difficult.
Okay, well, I want to break that down a little bit and just make it like very bite-sized, relatable-ish, because let's just say you get on the phone and you're like, okay, I have to have a difficult conversation with this parent who is highly opinionated, and maybe they're going to guilt me. Maybe they're going to try to control me. Maybe they're going to try to bully me. And we get on the phone, we're having the conversation, maybe we're face to face, and all of this takes 5 seconds, right? The parent maybe makes one comment and you're gone. We're flying off the handle, right? And we know we have a difficult thing we've got to do, whether it's financial, it's making a legal decision, like we've got to do it. And time is always of the essence, right? So what happens in that moment when you're like on the phone or in person, there's a difficult decision on the table and that parent just drops a comment, like, boom, they trigger you. What do you do? I hope other people can relate to these moments because
Absolutely.
that's what it is, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
so like,
absolutely. There's triggers, right? There's
Yes.
triggers
Yeah.
that, as part of our family systems that we all grew up with, we all know how to push each other's buttons.
yeah.
It's almost like subconscious, right? And not that anyone means to do it.
Oh,
but
well,
they,
sometimes it's very conscious.
Sure, that's
Because
how I
you
guess,
have the
yes,
comments
yes.
over here.
Yeah.
I'm a comment dropper. That's what I do. I have like a little arsenal. And when I get really mad, I'm like, I just drop. Okay, so what do we do?
Yeah. So first of all, it's hard for me not to tap into my counseling background here and just ask you, Robyn, by dropping those comments, what need are you trying to get met? Because you've learned over time that when you drop a comment, it does something, right? It gets a reaction or it achieves some goals. And the same thing goes for your parent who's dropping those comments or making those little jabs in that short phone call, right? But of course, we're going to be triggered, and we've probably been triggered by some of the same things our whole lives. So it's super difficult. And I wish that I had like a magic pill answer, but the truth is some of these, skills that we've learned through the years, these coping mechanisms that we hear all the time really do work. So if you notice that you're agitated and you can immediately feel that heart racing and you can feel that your rational brain has gone
Yep,
offline,
yep.
you know what that feels like in your
That's
body.
what I'm talking about. Yes.
Yes. The best thing you can do for that relationship, even though there's a time crunch to make that choice and that decision, the best thing that you can do is pause and call back even in 5 minutes. Once you've had just like time to take 3 breaths, to take the dog out, whatever it is that's just going to
Okay,
allow
but what's
your,
the script?
your brain
What's
time.
the script there? Let's pretend you're in it. You're triggered. How do you get off the phone? How do you walk away?
I
Like,
mean,
give me all the steps.
the mediator, the like professional, nice way would be maybe I can feel that this conversation's getting tense right now. We need to take a break. But in real life, maybe you just say, oh no, the dog just peed on the floor. Or, oh my gosh, my neighbor is here. My neighbor's knocking on the door. Like maybe we all have these code words,
I love that.
Oh my God, that's so
But-
funny. I didn't think you were going to say that.
Get yourself out of there because otherwise you're going to react. And we know that reactions never achieve the goal. So even though dropping that one-liner or that jab might get our need met in the short term, in the long run, a reaction is not going to get us where we want to go. So we always want to take some time to make sure that our prefrontal cortex is online and we can choose our response. And then we're going to have an easier time making
I was going to
that
ask,
choice.
what's your professional opinion on pressing mute and screaming at the top
Yeah.
of your lungs and then unmute? Because I've done that.
Yeah.
Okay, what did you just say about the prefrontal cortex, though? Can you go back to that? Break that down for us.
So you know the expression flipping your lid, right? Like when you're so mad, you say, "Oh, I'm going to flip my lid."
Yeah.
That is because when we're triggered, our prefrontal cortex literally flips offline, and so we start to operate from our amygdala, and we start to
Oh,
just
did you know
react
that?
based out of fear.
I read about it.
We're triggered, right? We're
Yeah,
triggered.
yeah.
Yeah. This is one of those things that's all over the internet now. So it's like
Okay.
coming to be more commonly known. And we know now that it just takes maybe 5 seconds, really. It's not long. 3 deep breaths. It's not long for us to be able to come back online and be able to choose a better response. For me, it's walking outside. I mean, a walk outside, a walk or a jog or some kind of physical activity, I'm always going to feel differently when I come back to that call later. And you know what? Now that I've been through the process of being my mom's healthcare agent and going to all the appointments and making all the choices, I can say, looking back on that now, do not let that pressure affect the way that you move through this process, and really know that you have more time to ask more questions and you have more time to make the decisions than it might feel like you do from the outside pressures, right? So I remember the hospital telling me, you need to decide if your mom's going to go to which hospice or where is she going to go next, and it's like, I couldn't even understand what was going on. And thankfully, I had a lot of help from, I'll shout out Linda Allen at Quiet Oaks.
Yeah,
She
Linda.
helped me. Yeah, she helped me make that choice and really like calmly and with a lot of compassion guided me through that. And she took time to talk to me. So there's always going to feel like we have to make this choice right now. But I'll just say, looking back and from my experience, you don't always have to make that choice right then. You can take a walk outside and come back to that decision when you're more rational. And when your parent is more rational.
Right. Cool heads will prevail, Okay, I loved those tips. And that was kind of like a phone call. What are your tips for in person? Let's say you're in person, you're about to like sign power of attorney, or you're talking through the finances and someone throws a fit, right? Could be you, could be your parent, just drops a bomb and says, well, I knew you didn't care about me, or after everything I've done for you. Okay, just doing a little role playing here, right? I mean, I think these are things that people can relate to.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Yeah, super triggering, obviously really, really hard and really difficult. So I don't want to make this sound easy by any means, but if you can tap into a little bit of curiosity in that moment and just recognize that those jabs are about something, right? Your parent is saying that for a reason. And it's not, the most healthy way to get their needs met, but they're trying to communicate something. I've found that it's a lot easier for me as a person to feel good just in general, but especially towards other people, if I try and extend some compassion and just tap into some curiosity about, why is this person acting like such an a-hole? Or why is this person acting so difficult, right? Like there's some reason they're acting that way.
Yeah.
And so if you can just let that bounce off you and try and tap into some curiosity and empathy and recognize that they're trying to communicate something here. They're not doing it in a healthy way. And then reflect back what you heard. So this is a mediator pro tip. So your mom says, after all that I've done for you, or you feel like I'm a burden, right? You say, you're feeling like I think you're a burden, or I'm sorry to hear that you think that I'm a burden. I don't want you to feel that way. What can we do so that you feel less like a burden?
Ooh, that's good.
And just kind of
that's
ask
really
them.
good.
The reflecting back thing is huge.
Yeah, tell us about the reflecting back, because I feel like that sounds like a very rational response. And I feel like I could hear a parent saying that to their kid. And instead of it just hitting you where it hurts, I like the idea of trying to reflect back and have compassion if you can hold it together. And so the reflect back, can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so this is a huge part of what we do as mediators, because ultimately everybody just wants to feel heard and recognized, right? That's what we all want. We all want to feel like our experience is valid and people see it and we're recognized for what we're going through. And so usually it's best if you try and use the language that the person used. If you can reflect back their emotional expression, they will immediately feel less agitated. They're going to feel like they're heard, they're seen, and maybe they'll be able to then tell you what's actually going on.
Yes.
But if not, you can just ask, what's going on, or why do you feel that way? I hear you saying that you think you're a burden. Why would you feel that way? My mom used to say, I don't remember the exact quote, but I know she used to say like, oh, you don't really want me here, when she lived with us. And that was her expressing her own emotional experience about being there. I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
she felt like a burden, and she understood that it was a burden on some level, and on some level I did want her here, right? She understood that.
Mm-hmm.
So if you could say, you're feeling like I don't want you here, what would make you feel more wanted here? Or how can we change that? And you could even be honest. You're right. There are times where it's hard to have you here, but I do want you here, you know?
Oh, I'm just like thinking about what happens like with me and my dad. I have this idea of his intentions sometimes. And I have this idea from growing up that there's selfishness to what is happening. So like sometimes I come into the conversation thinking about that. And for some reason, I think as kids, we want to call out their behavior because we're like, oh, I know what this is. This is manipulation. This is selfishness. This is like a power struggle. So we're like, I gotcha. I know what you're
Yeah.
doing. I know what you're doing. And it's weird because in this time in life, the power dynamics have flipped. But I think it's really hard for us to understand that because we're still the kid. We're still the kid being like, nope, you're not going to do this to me. But the thing is, they actually need us. And I think if you can try to get inside and understand, okay, yes, maybe they used to manipulate me this way, or maybe they were coming from a selfish place, and maybe that's all true. But the fact of the matter is, they're vulnerable. And they're trying in their own way to express their vulnerabilities, and it doesn't come out the way that we want. But it's hard to see your parent as somebody who's vulnerable. It's hard to see them as someone who needs something from you. And I feel like if you can get inside thinking that way, you can respond with more compassion rather than being like, gotcha, I know what you're doing to me. And rather like, I see what's happening to you and I want to try and flip the script and help.
Well, and just as much as you still feel your role as a child, they still feel their role as a parent too. So it's like, even though you are taking on more caregiving, almost parental responsibilities, right? They're still like, I'm still the parent. So there's a level of respect that they deserve and would like to see. And sometimes it's hard to not speak to them like a child when things are difficult. Can you speak to that actually? I know we're starting to get into this feeling of control. And when you're in a caregiving role, oftentimes decisions or conversations feel just like you said, like fight or flight. You got to make them now. You got to take care of business. And everyone has good intentions, but it's so stressful and it's putting stress on everyone. And there's also like a series of losses happening around them, like tiny losses. And there's so many layers that people are trying to hold on to control in this moment from both sides.
So true.
So how do you navigate, not that anyone's trying to be a control freak, but like there's
never.
things to take.
We would never try to control this
You're trying
situation.
to keep it together. You're just trying to keep it together. Because also when you're in the sandwich generation, it's like you're having these conversations and then you're going to daycare pickup and turning on that emotion too of like,
if everyone would just do what we said, there would not be a problem. How many times a day do I think that? If you just do what I say. I'm not a control freak. I'm just telling you what's best for you.
So how do we manage our control?
Asking for a friend.
You guys just shared so much, and I want to respond to all of it, but
Sorry.
let's stick with the control piece for a moment because, well, first of all, let's just acknowledge that everyone is experiencing grief, right? There's grief around all these losses that you mentioned. Loss of your role, loss of health, loss of your parent as you knew them. You're all experiencing grief. And so that is impacting your brain and your brain's ability to function, and it's impacting you emotionally, and it's actually impacting your ability to feel empathy for others. We know all this is true about grief. So that's all going on. And then, you're trying to just cope with this. And a big way that we try and cope when we're really, really afraid is to try and control things, right? We're trying to keep things in an order where we can make sense of them and feel like we have a handle on things. That's a big way that some people cope, especially if you tend to be more of a caretaker type, or you've always been like the achiever in the family. That's how you cope with uncertainty. Anxiety is trying to control things. So I think it's so normal and natural. And then, from your parents' perspective, trying to maintain that control, you can just imagine that if if you're being asked to change and give up and you're not ready or you don't want to, you're going to try and push back against that. And you've always been the parent, and you've had that dynamic of being the authority figure, and now that's being taken away from you. You can imagine how difficult that is. So everybody is going through something super difficult. And I think you're right. If you can just tap into empathy about that. The tricky thing is, we're all very evolved women here and very emotionally intelligent. And so we know better. And we can see that manipulation or that controlling behavior. We can see it and feel it, and we know it's not healthy. So I think it's natural to want to try and tell our parent or call it out, but we have to recognize that people don't change overnight. And if that's someone's way of being and of coping, it's going to take a lot of little opportunities for them to change. So we can never control the people around us, but we can control how we respond to them. And if we identify that our parent is engaging in manipulative behavior, we can just name it silently to ourselves.
And not to them. I think you should say that again. Just say that again. We
just
say
name
it,
it. Just notice it.
Just be like, yep, I know what that is, but I am not going to say it out loud. Okay.
Yeah. But I also know that my family system is not ready for me to totally call that out and try and disrupt that right now. This is the way that we've been relating to each other for 40 years, and this is not going to change overnight. But if I change the way that I respond to Dad just slightly every time, eventually he will change along with me. I think that a lot of difficulty during this time comes from family dynamics being asked to change overnight. And that just puts too much stress on everyone, and everybody gets really reactive and irritable.
So can you give us an example? Let's say, again, like we're having this conversation and the dad is like, no, this is the way we're doing it. This is the way we've always done it. I can handle this. And then the daughter comes in and says, no, it's actually not okay. The younger generation knows that it's a detriment to the older generation to be managing something. And they know that there needs to be some kind of switch of hands or more access. I think this is something people run into all the time, whether it's legal, financial. So let's say you're in that conversation and it's over something really important, and you can see that the parent has like tightened their grip because they can tell that you're about to try to take it away from them. What do we do in that moment? What do we do?
So I would say try and not dig your heels in that moment, right? If you can tell that they are pushing back, then maybe let them push back in that moment.
Okay.
And try again in a more subtle way a little bit later on. But also you can use that reflecting skill. You can say, you've always managed your finances so well, right? Now some things are coming up that maybe are getting out of your control. I think you've always done this really well, but maybe there's an opportunity for me to step in and help, right? So a little bit of just sandwiching the issue into two affirmations will communicate it in a way that they're going to hopefully be more receptive to what you're saying.
I'm loving this conversation.
I know, me too.
So good.
As we're sitting here and as I'm listening to your advice and your questions, I can't help but feel like a lot of how we approach a difficult conversation with our parents is very similar to how I try, and I am not perfect, but how I try to approach a difficult conversation with my children. And not saying that the grandparents are children or, vice versa, but we're in 2026 now. The idea of like gentle parenting is a thing. And while I don't subscribe to all of that personally, what I do love is the language and emotional intelligence in conversations and having conversations with your children about feelings or why something is happening, or going back to that curiosity factor. I just had a situation with one of my daughters last night where she was really upset about something that was surprising, and I was triggered also, but instead of getting mad at her, I just sat down and hugged her, took a breath, and then said, I don't think that what you're feeling right now is about this book or whatever. What is it really about? What's really going on? And
Such a good thing to say.
I feel like just, for lack of a better word, maybe a movement in parenting culture these days where we're trying to raise these little ones with more emotional intelligence and awareness in conflict, especially, or in hard feelings, and how to maybe move through those moments more healthily than what our parents did. And also your advice of if our reactions that we can have towards our parents might help them change a little bit over time. I think part of having a difficult parent is also that they were raised in an entire different generation that approached finances, healthcare, aging, I mean, all of the big things in such a different way. Opening up or being vulnerable or letting go of control was not how they were raised. So that's probably a huge component of why it feels extra tricky, because they probably weren't given those tools that we're like trying to teach our littles.
People are not going to change the way that they've always moved through the world, the way that they've always responded to people, the way their worldview overnight. And, you know, we can decide to set a new boundary, but we can't expect them to immediately adhere to that boundary. And so boundaries take a lot of time to establish. And it's a lot of continuously just sort of setting that new standard, continuously asking for a new behavior in a gentle way over time is the best way to set a boundary with someone, because they will eventually adapt, but it's not going to happen overnight. And I am not by any means saying that their behavior is okay or condoning any language or manipulation or behavior like that. But I'm just acknowledging the reality that boundaries take time to establish and new ways of behavior take time to establish. And so the best thing that we can do for ourselves is recognize that and be patient, because only we suffer really when we continuously get agitated by them not changing overnight. We're suffering more than they are. They're fine, probably. You know,
I've been to a lot of therapy over the years. There are little isms in our family that I have taken a lot of time to work through, to know and learn that those boundaries are okay. There's been a lot of work on my end too to kind of let it roll off my back now. And that's like normal family stuff too.
Yeah.
I feel like everyone's got that shit.
No, but I don't think that's anything small about taking the power out of something that they might have said when you were 10. If you take the power out of it, parents are just like anyone else. Like, they have their ways of hurting you or trying to hurt you because they want to feel like they're in control or powerful again. And it's like, if you don't take the bait and you move on and you realize what it's about, then you can move on from the moment. If we're all in our best, rational, well-fed, slept selves, which is which is every day. I mean, we're so healthy and normal every day. Oh, I did want to say also, I like how you were talking about the idea of small changes over time. I think people, especially with a difficult parent, people are like, well, they're never going to change. They're just never going to change. You know, like, they are who they are. I am here to say that I don't think that's true. I think we underestimate people. You know, my dad in particular, I want to give him a lot of credit here. My dad has been through so much, and I think people can't even understand the scope of what he's been through. He lost physical independence. He no longer drives. He loved to drive. I think it's been a very humbling experience, because there have been a lot of young women trying to tell my dad how to act and not always being considerate of what generation he's from. I think just like me and my sister reminding each other of that when we get triggered, it's like, okay, remember what he's been through and remember his own losses and his own grief and his loss of independence. And I like when my dad will actually just level with me sometimes and just say, you know, this is hard. So I do think that we all have parents that might feel difficult, and there is an ability for them to change.
absolutely.
You know what I do sometimes? This isn't necessarily a tip, but if time allows, because sometimes time doesn't allow it. But when we're coming home from a doctor's appointment or the hospital, maybe they just got discharged from the hospital. And like, I feel like with every hospital visit too, it's just like another notch in their belt of like, well, that was unexpected. Well, that's not how I thought things would go, right? It's a continued series of losses at a certain point, and that's hard. And when we're on those car rides home, I usually try to take a moment to just like acknowledge like how hard that was, And then sometimes I try to stop at like a Caribou or a Starbucks and get them a little treat.
Yes.
It's like,
The treat is key.
Oh, the treat is key.
We bring my dad coffee.
Yeah.
And it's like, it just instantly, it just shifts his mood, you know?
Yeah.
It's huge. Yeah.
I love what I'm hearing. I love, because you're tapping into empathy and recognizing that compassion is key. Compassion for your parent, compassion for yourself, for everything that everyone is going through, and acceptance, right? I mean, compassion and acceptance are the remedies here, because we can accept that our parent is a human and they're flawed and they have strengths and weaknesses just like we do, and they're going through a really, really hard time. And we can accept that there are some boundaries that we need to put in place, and that it might take time for our parent to change the way that we want them to change, but that they can over time. It's just all about acceptance and compassion, really, really is. My mom, the greatest thing she said to me that I just always think of it, it was so powerful, and I don't even think she realized, but she said when she was living with us and staying with us, I was in the kitchen just like juggling, doing the dishes and making dinner, and my daughter's got to go to basketball and all these things. And she said, "Molly, I really see that you're holding this all together here." I can't remember the exact quote, but it was like, you are really managing this.
And then
well.
Did you fall apart? Did you start crying?
I felt so seen. And again, we all just want to feel like recognized and seen for what we're going through. So anytime you can say to your parent, that doctor's appointment didn't go well, that must have been really hard. They might not be used to hearing that language, and they might not be used to communicating that well, that way. Like you were saying, they're not used to having these open conversations necessarily, but it's still so helpful.
Yeah.
Because they need that too.
They do. They really do. How long did your mom live with you?
So it was like October to January. So,
okay.
Yeah. And then she passed in February.
Okay. I bet that time was really special, though. I'm sure it was very difficult. Speaking of difficult.
She laughed. Well.
Yeah. The things that we talked about was like balancing feeling resentful about your experience as a caregiver. And I remember during that time, people always used to say to me, "Enjoy the time you have, enjoy the time together." And I just was so angry and agitated and irritable about that.
Oh my God,
Yes.
I can so relate to that. I can so
Yeah.
relate to that.
Yes.
That is so real for me. And I've never talked about that before, because I love that you just said that. That's so real.
Yeah. But resentment is so normal and natural and okay to feel, especially when you're under a lot of stress and you're tired and fatigued and your brain is stressed and your emotions are stressed. It's okay if you feel resentful of your experience. It's okay if you feel resentful toward your parent. 100% okay. I have a teenage daughter, and sometimes she hates me and sometimes she loves me. And that's just how it is.
Yep.
And as much as we think that we have moved past that childhood inner child, we haven't. We will always have that relationship with our parent of a love-hate. That's just, it is what it is. That's the relationship dynamic, and it doesn't change just because we're adults.
But it's crazy how it can change within 30 seconds.
Totally,
isn't
yeah.
it? How you can be like resentful, and then something happens in the moment, and then you're like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I love you," or vice versa.
Yeah.
Where you're like, "I love you," and then they say something like, "I need water today," and then you're like, "God damn it, I was just so loving you."
I always joke that no matter how like perfect of a parent we all try to be, like our kids are gonna end up in therapy talking about something we did, and we have no idea that we're even doing it.
Okay, if you know someone who might have a difficult parent, you know who your friends are that might have them, please just hit the share button. I'm sure they're really going to appreciate this episode.
Okay, I want to talk about denial because you kind of brought that up, but I feel like sometimes with a difficult parent, one of the most difficult things that I've had to navigate with my parents, specifically my dad, was driving. And when it was time to say goodbye to driving, that is layered with so many emotions. And like, of course it is. It's their independence. It is their freedom. Navigating the conversation of how to approach your parent who it's probably time that they stop driving. that is one that can be the most difficult. So do you have any advice?
Love that.
In my situation, there was a lot of denial for a while, and it wasn't necessarily his fault, right? Again, it's like he's processing this, he's having to make his own decision, and he probably drove for a little longer than he should have. Sorry, everyone else on the road. Because it was like there was so many losses happening in that same year and a half that just felt like we're not there yet. And in our family situation too, it was also a very financial decision. Like they could not afford any longer to maintain or take care or insure their vehicle. So that kind of helped us a little bit in that transition, but it was also time. So what advice do you have for those having the difficult conversation about when it's time to stop driving?
There are some topics that are just so tough that if you can bring in a neutral person to have that conversation, it might go a little bit better. And that doesn't have to be a mediator. That can be any neutral person who they might listen to better. You know,
Sure.
It's hard for a parent to hear their child tell them that they can't do something. It may be less difficult for them to hear from their doctor or a friend, a peer, someone who's also given up driving, who had a positive experience after they did it. You know, coming from someone else, they might be more receptive. So a big part of my role as a mediator, I sometimes say the exact same thing that the party would have said, right? But the parties hear each other better when it comes from me. They're willing to listen. They actually can take it in because, you know, sometimes our defenses go up so immediately we don't even hear the words or the rationale of what somebody's trying to communicate to us. So if you can call upon somebody else in their circle, in their life, who they might receive better, that's what I would say.
I love that tip too, because the driving thing is so real. We were talking about, should we have an episode just about like, how do I get my parents not to drive? Because like, it's such a moment of giving up independence and I think a lot of people struggle with it. But also,
I would hate it.
they
I
would,
hate
but
it
also,
if someone that was like, well, you can't drive anymore. Like, no, you know,
exactly. Oh
that's
my
hard.
God.
That's
Oh my
really
God.
hard.
My heart goes up. Like, I agree with you. But also they will blame that person for life. By the way.
Yeah, that's true.
So I like the idea of it being somebody maybe that you'll never see again. I love your idea of bringing a third party because I agree with you.
I also love the tip you just said of inviting someone into the conversation who has already made that transition, and maybe if they could share how difficult it was, but then how maybe positive it had been. And
Same with
learning
like
from that.
hearing aids.
Oh God.
I feel like that's the same
that's
thing.
another huge
Hearing
one.
aids is another one.
Yeah.
I bet there's people listening and they're like, how the hell am I going to get my mom to put her hearing aids in? It's the same
Right,
thing.
you
My
won't.
dad and I are talking about hearing aids right now. And I'm like, oh, I wonder who I could find that wears hearing aids and be like, hey, look, they're not so bad. So that's like the same thing, you know, like.
I mean, the hearing aids conversation I could actually go off about right now because
stuff, you guys. Hearing aids.
Yeah.
oh my gosh, the amount of times you have to change the batteries. I'm sorry. Those things are so small. Like, it's impossible. Second of all, to get them to wear their hearing aids. But I don't also blame them because it's like hearing aid technology should be easier than it actually is right now. Like, there's all this tech and it can like connect to phones and, you know, we're already like the tech department in so many different ways that when the hearing aids do not connect to the technology, they get disconnected. It's not working. It just feels like it's more complicated than helpful sometimes.
So you'd rather them not hear?
No,
Yeah.
I just want them to go back to like the old school hearing aids that just worked on their own, that didn't have to connect to anything.
But is your parent more difficult if they can't hear or
for sure.
once they can hear and
Well,
then
I
they
don't
can't
know.
work their hearing aids?
Actually, I don't know. My mom, when she wears her hearing aids, again, depending on the technology, because it's like the sound can bounce behind them, the sound can bounce forward. So if we're at a restaurant, she's like frustrated because she's trying to get the sound to go in the right direction for her hearing aids to hear a conversation. And then she's like, screw it. I don't know. Just not
I
gonna
would be
hear.
so frustrated with that.
Absolutely.
I think, again, it's like compassion for what they're going through. Imagine the way you felt when you started driving, like how much freedom. Life was just different when you got your driver's license.
It was brilliant.
And
Yeah.
To have to give that up, I just can't even imagine. And so, having compassion around that experience too of sound bouncing everywhere, like that would suck.
Oh, it would drive me nuts. I mean, I can't even handle it when like you're in a movie theater and the sound isn't going the right direction. Like it drives me nuts. It ruins the whole experience. So yeah, I don't blame her.
People are not going to change until they are ready to. So I don't know if I mentioned it already, but my background's in addictions counseling. And I think that one of the gifts that I received from doing that work is really, truly, truly understanding that people do not make changes in their lives until they are ready. There's a whole readiness for change scale that people are assessed on, in terms of where they are in their addiction and when they're ready to make a change. And it has to be coming from a place where things in their life have tipped to that point where they're ready to make a change in behavior. And the same thing goes for all of these changes that our parents are being asked to make. Obviously, it's to a lesser degree or different than addiction, but we're still talking about change.
Yeah.
And people aren't going to make those changes or establish those routines until they have the motivation and incentive and desire to do so on their own, no matter how many times we tell them to put their hearing aids in.
That's true. That's true.
I love that.
That's good advice.
That's a good reminder.
I have one last comment about our driving conversation. This is not for everyone. I'm just going to say that. This is not for everyone at all. But my dad, one of his strengths, it's both a strength and weakness, I should say, is that he's very stubborn. He will find a way to get what he wants or is interested in no matter what. And it's awesome. It is such a strength because it is like the way that he's prevailed so much in life and overcome so much, right? And really carved out this whole life that he's had. It's amazing. I love that about him. And also that's the wall that we can hit sometimes is the stubbornness because he doesn't want to take no for an answer. But Pete Johnson, everyone, is the most resourceful person I've known in my life. So when it came to him not driving, what he chose to do, we learned about like Metro Mobility and programs that they could get on to make rides a little easier for them. But he decided, and this was all his own thing, he was like, Metro Mobility, what about the bus system? My dad can now navigate the entire Metro bus system.
So cool.
No problem. He's always been a big maps guy, but he knows the bus routes up and down, left and right now in the cities. If you want to get anywhere via public transit, he'll let you know how. And he loves it now because he says he sits back and he just watches the show. He just gets on the bus.
That's like a major success story.
It is. It is a major success story. That is how he is. You know, he's a very free person and I've always admired that about him. So I share this because if you have a stubborn parent, sometimes there are other solutions or options out there that maybe they haven't accessed yet. And it helps lessen that burden or that grief if they know that they have another option for freedom, really. I mean, I think a lot of it comes down to freedom too, because they're still living their lives.
Okay, I kind of wanted to make sure that we covered these two things. There's so many things, I know. The two things I think about are guilt and triangulation. Guilt. Do you have any tips? Let's say you got a parent who is just so good at the guilt. This is who I'm going to be. So I am like speaking for myself in 30 years. I just know. My sister already told me. She told me I am a guilter. What do you do with a parent who is really good at guilting you?
I first want to acknowledge that guilt is one of the primary things that I hear from caregivers. So I go out and do a lot of presentations to caregiver groups, and they always express guilt. Guilt and fear are huge. So I think that just in our role as caregiver in general, we're feeling a lot of guilt. But yeah, when a parent tries to then employ it and use it against us, when we're already feeling guilty, it can be really, really difficult. And, we know, again, that employing guilt to try and get a need met is not a healthy tactic. But it is a tactic, right? We're trying to achieve something. We're trying to get a need met. And so is your parent when they're trying to guilt you. They're trying to get a need met. So if we can just, again, try and remain calm and use our skills to stay centered and not let things trigger us, maybe we can tap into that curiosity around what is going on here. Why are they trying to guilt me right now? What are they trying to achieve? And just outsmart it a little bit,
Like,
and
what's an
maybe
example?
ask,
Okay, like, what's a good line of guilt that we've heard?
Oh, I think for me, okay, so this is an example. Recently, behind the scenes, I also do so much for my parents that they don't see, right? It's a lot of the insurance, it's the finances, it's the calls to the county for their medical assistance. It's constant for me. And a couple months ago, we had like invited them to some things that they weren't able to come to either because of their health or the weather, or, something like that, which is totally fine. But my mom made the comment, like, I just feel like an outsider to your life. I feel like you're never around. I feel like I'm never seeing you, And that triggered me because I was like, do you not see what I'm doing all the time? And no, she doesn't really, right?
yeah.
But what she was asking for was more time. Right. It wasn't that she's an
So how
outsider
did
to
you
my life.
respond
It's
in that
more
moment?
time.
I would love to, as a rational, or did you? I don't know.
I think I said something like, well, that's not true, and
How did that go?
I'm sure I said something not cool and collected, I should say. I don't really remember how I responded, but I do remember being like, I want you to see all the things that I'm doing. I want to explain some things to you so you can understand this. And then,
Or what my sister would say is, do you know everything we do for you that you can't even
Yeah.
see?
Yeah.
Which I completely understand when she says that, because I'm like, yep, I get
Yeah.
it. But that's not what we
Yeah.
should say. Sorry.
well, and frankly, like, being sandwiched, there's so much going on too. This is all coming back to me now. She brought up the fact that, like, she has a neighbor, and her neighbor's son every week comes over and they do dinner and it's great. And I was kind of like, okay, that's awesome. Is the son like married? Does he have children? And she was like, oh no, he's single. And I was like, cool. How old is he? And she's like, in his 50s. And I was like, okay, so there's a 50-year-old single man who's able to come over once a week for dinner. That is awesome. I am a parent of two very young children who have activities at night. Are like, I'm doing my best here. And that was sort of how we ended our conversation, was like, I see that your neighbors are experiencing this thing, and I would love that too. I would love nothing more than more family dinners together. And also the reality of right now, this very moment, is like, we're doing the best that we can. We're trying to see you as often as we can. And that has to be enough for like this very moment. And she understood that then. But that
Can
was a guilt
you,
trip. That started as a guilt trip.
yeah, so your mom wanted to feel seen and understood for her emotion, which was feeling loneliness or neglected or however she felt.
Yep.
You then, in response, were like, no, I want you to see what I'm going through.
Yeah.
Is there a way that you can both feel heard and seen other than trying to guilt each other, which probably
Right.
left you both?
Right.
Totally.
Right.
So
That's so, yeah.
try and let's just tweak the old I feel blank when you blank, so in the future I would like you to blank, right? Let's just tweak that a little bit. And let's just start with reflecting back what you heard from your mom, reflecting her emotion first, because I think that's critical. And then going to the I feel blank when you blank. So let's just role play
Sure.
that real quick. So you would have said to your mom, I hear you feeling like I'm not visiting you enough, or whatever it is. What would it have been?
Yeah, it probably would have been like, I hear that you feel like we're not visiting you enough, and that you would like more connected family time with us. And then I would say, what is the emotion of that? That makes me feel guilty, like I'm not doing enough, when I feel like I'm trying to do so much for you and I'm trying to do my best. And it's really difficult it feels like the effort is being pulled in two different directions sometimes. So that's hard to hear, that you feel like we're not spending enough time with you, when I feel like I'm making maximum effort to spend as much time with you as possible.
Well,
Is that how I'm
say
feeling?
That was
you just
very
process
good.
it up. And
You must
that's,
be
I think,
exhausted. That was exhausting. We're going to have lunch after this, honey.
I'll send you the bill for the therapy that
I feel when you.
But we can just keep it super simple too. You know, I think the simpler the better. And so, Mom, I hear that you feel we're not visiting you enough. I feel like I'm juggling all the time and just torn between wanting to see you and wanting to see my kids, wanting to see my husband. You know, it's constant juggling. And so in the future, since we're both feeling bad, maybe there's a way that we can talk about this differently. You know, you don't necessarily have to propose a solution. But just acknowledging how she feels and how you feel and how, this is hard, right, for both of us, I think is key. It's just that we want to feel like people recognize what we're going through in our experience, and that's really it.
Again, something my sister and I reflect back on a lot too. When my mom, I would say she would use guilt. My mom was like almost near perfect, but she would guilt, that's probably where I learned it. And she now isn't in a place where she can say this, but before it was like, we haven't seen the kids. We haven't seen them. And like we go almost every Sunday, but it was like not enough, never enough. Yeah. And we have to remember our lives are so busy and they are so constant, and they are sitting there with so much time to think, more time than they've ever had, to think about and reflect and obsess. I wanted to be like, we were just there. That's what I wanted to say. And sometimes I would. But if I was in a more measured place, I would be like, I know it feels like we haven't been there, but we're planning to do this. Sometimes just letting her know the next time we were coming, or shift on to like what we have to look forward to. And that usually would really work. It's kind of like a redirecting for your parents, like.
Now that you're saying that, it brings me back to that conversation or that example I just used with my mom. One thing she did say, which I thought was great, and that was a turning point in our conversation actually, was she was like, I guess when I was raising you, like, life was slower. We were in a smaller town. Things were different. I guess when I was raising you, it was just like all centered around our house, and we didn't have to go out a lot, and we didn't have to run around a lot. And she did have a level of empathy and understanding, which was huge, which was awesome.
Yeah,
that's really
empathy
good.
Empathy and compassion truly are key for yourself, right? The more you can try to understand what someone else is going through and extend them some compassion, the less you'll feel agitated and the easier it will be for you to relate to other people. It's really a gift you can give yourself. And then making sure that you're also giving yourself all that compassion as well, right? That you're taking a look at what you're going through and your experience and recognizing how hard it is for you. But it's truly, truly a gift to be able to just recognize, this is a huge change or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And it allows you to see people more as humans, right?
Yeah.
And for their experience as human beings, which our parents are humans just like we are.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. Oh,
okay. You mentioned triangulating earlier, and I don't know if the sibling dynamic is where you were going with that.
Yes, exactly.
I feel like when parents are aging, there are assets on the line, there's finances in the mix, maybe there's property. People have very different ideas of how it should all be divvied out or who should take responsibility for what. Oftentimes siblings have different personalities that they're bringing to the table. So how do you navigate those difficult conversations with siblings? Do you have any tips? Because I feel like that gets real messy real quick. Besides hiring you and having a lovely mediator.
I mean, these are the majority of calls that I get, right? Are disputes between siblings. And it just goes back to understanding that we're talking about a family system here, and everybody has played a role in that family system and related to each other in a certain way. And when the family system is put under stress, any unresolved emotions, any old resentments, any beef that was there is going to boil up to the surface. And people are going to often revert back to unhealthy ways of coping and unhealthy ways of relating to each other. So it's super common And if you are a person who notices triangulation, if you can identify that that's happening, like kudos to you, because that means that you've done the personal work that it takes to remove yourself from that dynamic enough to see that it's not healthy or that it's happening. So I would just give yourself props for being able to recognize that in the first place. If I was trying to mediate that, and I noticed that that was happening, again, I would just really try and ask, okay, what is going on here? What is trying to be achieved through this triangulation or through this effort? And try and ask questions and guide the person to get to that answer so that I could help that person hopefully fulfill that need rather than utilize that tactic.
Could I ask more specifically? Because I'm thinking a lot about the triangulation with the parent. Now, let's say there's 2 sisters or 3 kids, whatever. And I feel like a lot of times it's the mom who's like, well, I just talked to your sister and she said blah, 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 blah. And then they hang up. Then she calls the other sibling, well, I just talked to your sister and she said blah, 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 blah. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So sometimes this makes a parent difficult, that they know this is a really great tactic for a parent. This is a low level thing they can always do because it's like a controlling mechanism or whatever. And this is the time it seems that you need to band together with your siblings because there is a common goal, right? So do you have advice for that specific situation where like the mom or the parent is kind of whispering different things in everyone's ears, knowing that it's going to divide them, and the goal of the parent might be to protect whatever control they might still have?
Yeah, it's not good, and you're probably going to feel triggered by it. So, whatever I say right now, take with a grain of salt, because I know it's easier to say this than to actually practice it. But if you hear your parent doing that, ask questions like, "Oh, and what do you feel about what Sister Susie said? Or what did you think when Sister Susie said that?" Just ask questions and try and be curious and keep the ball on their side of the court rather than trying to state your opinion in any way. Like, try and figure out more about what's going on and what they're trying to achieve before you react. Does that make sense or no?
No, it does. Or is it better to kind of like shut it down and like not even engage? I feel like as women are really good at triangulating. Does it
feel like gossipy? Like, is that what you're kind of getting at?
It's
that,
kind of like they're trying to draw you in. My mom did not do this, but I know I've heard it enough where I've seen it where they draw you in and then they get you in trouble because like you've just gone too far. And then you are like, oh, well, now do I call my sister and talk to her and be like, you'll never guess what mom just said about you, right? And then it becomes like a mess. So like, do you just shut it down when the parent is doing that just so that you don't engage? Do you like call your sibling and be like, okay, mom's trying to do this. We're not going to let her do it. Like what do you do to like end the cycle?
It gets so messy. Yeah, it gets so messy, especially when people are calling or even worse, texting each other.
Multiple
family members texting. Oh, it gets really, really messy. So there are
person.
Right. Yeah.
They're like, I have receipts. Sending screenshots left and right.
Did you mean to text that to me or your sister?
Is this the wrong thread?
You won't believe what mom is doing. This is mom.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think you're right that engaging in that triangulation and starting to talk behind each other's backs is probably not ultimately a healthy tactic, and shutting it down is really, really legit, right? And you can do that by just setting that boundary of, well, I don't really want to talk about what Susie said without her present, or if you want me to hear from Susie, let's just call her up right now and let's all talk together.
That's good. Yep. Okay.
Or
that's really good. Oh, let's call her. Let's give her a call.
Yeah, let's call her. Let's get her on the line right now, and I can hear from her directly. But however you choose to do it, the key is going to be first and foremost managing yourself enough to choose your response, right? And so this is where it comes down to that, what we hate to hear when we're going through difficult experiences, like, take care of yourself. I know everybody hates to hear that.
Strong eyeball.
Yeah. The truth is, you're going to have an easier time setting that boundary around triangulation or responding to your mom if you first and foremost are in a calm, centered place. So if you even have a hint of thinking that you might not be able to take that phone call from mom right now, don't do it. Do not answer when you're picking up your kids from school. Do not answer when like there's somebody at the door or your husband just told you that he doesn't like what you're having for dinner or something. Like, do not answer the phone call in those moments because you won't be able to choose your response.
But what if they won't stop calling you?
Yeah, exactly. How have you handled that? Because it sounds like
The more I press decline, man, my dad, he could get shit done by his robocalls. I agree with you. I feel like that's a big part of what we do actually is trying to figure out when we answer the phone.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep, totally.
Because there's so many moments of high stress in our day that we know like, okay, this isn't a good time, but they're just not going to stop. So sometimes I will just say, Dad, I love you. Is everything okay? Because then he knows that I'm only here for an emergency. He's like, yeah, I just need water. And I'm like, okay, I love you. I got to call you back. And now he knows, okay, she'll get me water. But it's kind of like his way of trying to be seen is what I've learned.
So I have a question. So we're talking about the sandwich generation and being in the thick of it. How do you deal with a difficult parent when they are being difficult in front of your children? And therefore kind of creating a really tricky dynamic because it's like you don't want to yell at your parents in front of your kids.
Such a good question.
But you want to like shut it down and you want your children to feel comfortable around them. But when they're being difficult and emotional in front of the grandkids, what's the best way to deal with that?
Super fun.
You know, when I was going through it, because my daughter was old enough to have conversation and really understand what was going on, I used it as a learning opportunity for her to point out, you know, grandma's having a really hard time, or this is really a stressful situation. And sometimes when people get stressed, they say things they don't mean, or things get heightened. I mean, my daughter is so sheltered, she doesn't really know what yelling is. I mean, I yell, but she doesn't know what I know growing up in the 80s, right? She's never...
Everybody yelled
that.
in the 80s.
Yeah.
It was a yelling kind of time.
So she's pretty sheltered in terms of witnessing unhealthy dynamics. And I don't think it was a bad thing for her to see some of that and to be able to process it with me. But if you have young kids, it's a lot different because they're not able to process what they're witnessing in the same way or what they're experiencing in the same way. But you can still try to, when things get out of hand or when grandma is acting whatever way, you can still try to explain to them, this is what just happened and this is why she might have done that.
That makes a lot of sense.
As best as you can. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's good advice. Because they also, even from a young age, are learning about like, even if it's another peer or kid, you know, in their class or something, or at daycare, being like, oh, so-and-so is like having a hard time today. Or like, you know, like there's language at their level that can be used. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not, we don't have to shield our kids from all of that negativity. If you have young kids, they're still going to attach to some of those memories. They're going to learn from that. I don't necessarily think we should shield all the bad parts, but it's important to talk with everyone involved in the situation around how it's going for them. You know, I always checked in with my husband. How is it having her here? Are you still, how has this changed your life? Are you feeling resentful now? Are you feeling resentful now? Are you feeling resentful yet? You know, but check in with kids too. Like, is it hard to have grandma here? How do you feel when she fell down? How did that make you feel? How do you feel when she yells at mom? You know, those types of questions and check-ins I think are really important.
That's a really
great
good reminder.
Advice. Yeah.
I need to do that more with my kids, check in, because they're, you know, right now we've been spending a lot of time at the hospital and a lot of time at assisted living, and my kids are really being exposed to a lot of, which seems so heavy, but it's just kind of there's no way to really sugarcoat that. I forget to just say, like, how are you feeling about that? Man, I have learned so much today.
So much. This is such an awesome conversation.
And also,
I knew it would be, but like this is rich.
I just want you to know, like, you are such a gentle soul and a compassionate soul, and I'm sure that you were incredible to your mom, and
thank you.
I could see your eyes get glassy, and I know it's like there's nothing like carrying the guilt to just make you feel like 1,000 pounds. So you did all the right things. And I know she was grateful. And thank you so much for your wisdom today and your calm, your still waters.
Yes, it's such a great name for your business.
Such a great name.
Do you have anything else you want to leave this episode with?
Just thank you for what you're doing. I wish I would have had access to this podcast when I was going through my experience. And I just know that what I've heard in the episode so far and will hear, it will help me in the future as my dad ages. And connecting with others and sharing our experiences is key, right? It's how we get through life. And you're providing that to people through this podcast. And I just really appreciate what you're doing. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot because we're what I think is so special about this, and we've talked about this before, is that we're in it. It's not like a situation that we were in 10 years ago. Like, we're currently in it, and meeting people like you who give families resources and opportunities to do this better because it's so brutal is such a gift. And every single person that we've talked to is someone that we wish we would have found 5 years ago or something like that too. So even if there's one listener who is like, we need Molly, I'm going to call Still Waters Mediation right now, I'm happy to just do this work and echo that, because caregiving is both a gift and just impossible. And I think what you're doing is so cool.
Sure. I don't think I could do this without, I mean, obviously going through that experience changed me and opened my eyes, and I'm just a different person now. I walk through life differently, and it motivated me a lot too. You want others to have an easier time than you had. And so that's, I think, why we're doing this, and hopefully that'll be the case.
We're all going to be better at difficult conversations after today.
Absolutely. We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and hopefully you can take away some helpful info and tips. All links and resources can be found in our show notes.
Please share this episode with anyone you think this might help. And if you have a topic that you'd like to talk more with us about in the sandwich generation world, please slide into our DMs on Instagram. Our handle is @thesandwichgenerationpod. We hope you'll be back for more convos with us soon. And remember, no matter whose diaper you're changing, you're never alone.
That was great. That was really good. All right.